Today, it's off to the drags as we visit the World Finals to look at some famous dragsters and their famous drivers. All that and more coming up next on World of Collector Cars.
World of Collector Cars is funded by Kimberly-Clark Corporation, maker of new Evolution 4 fabric for superior car cover protection. Evolution 4 fabric gives your car the advantage of 4-layer protection. Preserve your pride and joy with new Evolution 4 fabric, the sign of complete protection.
The World of Collector Cars is funded in part by Steel Rubber Products. Steel Rubber Products, manufacturing weather stripping and molded rubber parts for Chrysler Corporation, Packard, Independence, and General Motors Cars and Trucks. Steel Rubber Products, making parts for fellow hobbyists for nearly 30 years.
Whatever can be said about our featured guest on today's show has probably already been said. Don Prudhomme recently retired from driving at a very young 53 years of age. His drag racing career has spanned more than 30 years, with his first NHRA victory at the 1965 Winter Nationals in Pomona. Prudhomme has dominated the Nitro class with a total of 48 victories in funny car and top fuel. In the 1970s, he was consistently winning more than anyone else. So it was back to Pomona, California, where it all began to catch up with the Snake and his final strike at the Winston Select Finals. Our Southern California car expert, Bruce Meyer, was there to talk to Don.
Here we are with the most famous of them all, Don Prudhomme, on the final day of the final strike, something we've all been waiting and looking forward to for a long time. This day, of course, not your retirement, don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
it's quite a day.
Well, it sure has been. Certainly I wish we'd have went out in a little better fashion than we did. We had trouble with the car, and I'm still a racer. The day in Northwest, so we're still coming down from the problems we had. But all in all, it's been a great year. We won last weekend, and then to come in here at Pomona, our hopes were real high, but it doesn't always work that way.
Well, I think coming in second overall is a real terrific way to end a perfect, your final year. And I know it's not your final year.
No, it's not as far as being involved in the sport. I have a new sponsorship with Miller Genuine Draft, and a kid by the name of Larry Dixon is going to do the driving, and we still got the same team together. So we're going to have a great time, and I'm going to enjoy myself on the watching the car instead of sitting inside of it.
Well, it's just a treat being here. Did you enjoy seeing the Greer Black Prudhomme car here today?
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. Yeah, he did a nice job with it. That car was really close to my heart. It brings back a lot of memories, and to restore that car the way you did is I haven't seen anything any better than that, and it's just a privilege, and I'm sure Keith would really enjoyed it too. Too bad he's not with us anymore, but Tommy Greer, who was the guy that really funded that car in the early days to make it all happen. He's a great individual, and I'm sure he's going to enjoy seeing the car, too.
Well, hey, thanks so much, Don. And again, congratulations. And from all your fans, we're just, you are it. And I really appreciate your taking a moment to chat with us, and all the best.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, all the best. Well, we just saw the masses of people standing in line for Don the Snake's autograph, and I'm so fortunate to be here with Lynn Prudhomme, who has been a loyal crew member since the early 60s, over 30 years.
Early 60s, right.
And this must be kind of a day of relief and the end of an incredible season for you.
It's a day of relief, but it's also obviously a real emotional day, not just for me, but for Don and for the rest of the crew. They've worked really hard this year to make it his best year ever, and they feel a little let down right now.
Of course, finishing second in the point standing is hardly a letdown.
We're not complaining about that at all.
And he's just one of the terrific guys of this sport.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Well, and looking at the fans over there lined up, you can see why.
I know. I'm looking at him right now.
But he never separates himself from the fans. He's right in there with it, and he appreciates it, doesn't he?
Right. He loves it. That's why he's over there now. He could be hiding in the trailer or, leave or something else, but he's over there because of them.
And I know he takes his racing very, very seriously, and that's not going to stop.
No, it won't stop. Even as a car owner, he'll still take it very seriously.
And that's why he's had that incredible career.
Right. It's a business to him, but it's something he loves. He absolutely loves it. So it's real important to him not only to look good and to run good, but also to win.
In the history of drag racing, or probably any motorsport racing, I don't think there's a car with a higher win rate than the Greer Black Prudhomme car.
Probably not. I mean, it was incredible in its day, and I don't know that it's ever been surpassed. With all the, like his funny car wins and John Force's funny car win, it's probably still the highest win ratio.
Which is, again, a tribute to Don and his perfectionism.
And Keith Black and Tommy Greer and their perseverance.
Well, it's a team that does it, and it's so pleasurable for me to be here with Lynn Prudhomme, the captain of the team.
Captain. I wish.
Well, hopefully you'll go home tonight and relax and plan for next season. This is a big sigh of relief.
That will we do. We'll be doing that.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And speaking of that piece of drag history, the Greer Black drag car, Bruce now takes us for a close-up look at it.
Well, I must say, there isn't a better day to be sitting next to the Greer Black Prudhomme car than today, Don's final strike. And as the owner of the car, I'm very, very proud, and we just unveiled it today. And this car would not be here today or restored as magnificently if it had not been for Steve Davis, who really did the entire restoration and has saved this car for about 18 years. And it's just a pleasure to be here, Steve, and I know you're extremely proud of this.
Yes, this is a pretty good day. The project's been going on for so long. We started, stopped, and started to stop. Now I was building cars for Bernstein or doing tin work and a lot of stuff for Darryl Gwynn, and it kept on getting pushed aside. And I was sure the car was never going to get done. And so I approached Bruce right here to purchase the car and fund the rest of the restoration. And it's turned out to be just, a wonderful finish for the car, and get all the proper parts and get all the people together that had worked on the car, Tommy Greer and his sons. And unfortunately, Keith Black has passed away, but his son Ken was here yesterday. And Prudhomme, as you know, just took it down the track a little while ago. So it was fun for everybody.
Well, the car is simply magnificent. And Steve has saved this car. I'm looking at these tires. These are tires that you've squirreled away in your archives, I understand.
Yeah, a friend of ours had located 4 of these brand new tires that were last produced in 1965 and still had the mold marks on them. And Art used them on his Hustler 1 car and made enough passes until they were pretty well worn down. And then we sauced them up again and put them away. And so the tread's a little thin, but the sidewalls aren't cracked, and they are the exact tire that ran on this car, down to the same tread compound.
Well, the entire restoration has been done with the same loving care. Steve, who is extremely well known in the collector, even current car builder fraternity or circles, has taken such incredible pains in putting this car together. He literally took the threads out of the original interior and put it back in the original holes. I mean, and that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, meticulous is a euphemism. There is no finer or more passionate restorer or lover of these vintage cars than Steve. And Steve, now you've done work for Kenny recently as well?
Well, I've cut back on my contemporary drag race work quite a bit. I still build headers for Bernstein and do small sheet metal repairs. My good friend Dale Armstrong is a crew chief on that car, and so he brings over odds and ends, but we don't do any more complete cars or bodies or the work. I'm trying to cut back a little bit on the deadline OSIS and do more fun projects like this where you got a little bit more leeway to have them done, and it's just not quite as hectic. I feel I'm getting too old for these, deadlines.
Well, I love it because this guy is such an incredible talent. He says he doesn't do full restorations, but he just won the Oakland Roadster Show this year with one of his cars. So, the McPherson Roadster, I'm sure many of the people out there know that car, and that's another one of your projects. I mean, it sounds like you're cutting back. You're just a guy that can't say no.
Yeah, basically, and then jobs start overlapping, and it comes in for one thing and it grows into other, and pretty soon you got so many cars that are standing on end in your shop, and you just got to get them done. these things are so labor intensive, the hours stack up, and the price goes through the ceiling, and it's fun to get them done, but boy, it's just the cost is so phenomenal on these projects now.
Are you preparing me for my final bill?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, whatever it is, it's worth it, because this car is just, as the crowds will verify, a stunning, stunning car. And now the win-loss record for this car was, will probably never be beat.
Yes, it was just virtually incredible. It was probably the first time to where there was a car built where they had somebody with relatively unlimited funds, and Keith Black was right on top of the game at the time on the 392 Chrysler motor like is running this car here, and Prudhomme was an up-and-coming driver that nobody knew he was going to go this far, but his talent speaks for itself.
There's a wonderful photo, painting by Jim Ibusuki called First Strike, and I guess this car really is the first strike.
Pretty much so. Don had driven a couple of other cars that belonged to Dave Zuschel and Tommy Ivo, and he bought a car from Ivo and put a motor in it, but this was the first car that really put him on the map. The other cars ran pretty good, but this one here will go down in history as probably the best win-loss record that'll ever happen.
Steve, let's look at some of the details of this car and the workmanship. Starting from your original interior here that you salvaged so beautifully.
Well, I didn't do it personally. I can't take credit for that. A friend of mine that does a lot of leather work for our tools and power working equipment took it apart and restitched it himself, and he does an incredible job. The original leather was very dry and cracked, as you can see in some of the corners here. So he took it upon himself, take it apart, and reconditioned both sides of the leather, restuffed the pleats, and sew it back together and replace the snaps. And the safety equipment is the non-identical stuff that was run, the original 2-inch style belts, which are now illegal. And these harnesses right here are salvaged from World War II from the troop airplanes. That was a standard issue deal for all the paratroopers.
Steve, you've used every authentic, every original piece you can get your hands on, and it's incredible, the detail you've gone through. What about, is this the original third member, the original?
The third member is not the original piece. There's a number of aftermarket ones that was made. This was made by Mickey Thompson. However, the rear end housing itself is the original. It has the original Ed Donovan axles that were run in the car, and these are the original style brakes that were run at the time. They're an Earhart brake, a takeoff of an Earhart, and they're coupled with the early 5-spoke cast magnesium wheels. The third member, the Mickey Thompson third member, is also cast magnesium, which is very hard to keep up. It corrodes at an alarming rate.
Who's going to do that? How am I going to get that looking that good?
It sounds like a good job for Evan, for me,
Go ahead. Why don't you carry on and kind of tell us what we're looking at here?
Okay. And this group in here, this is the original bell housing that was used in the car that I got from one of the previous owners. And he kept it around because it became illegal very early on. It's a welded can made also by Ed Donovan, the gentleman that manufactured the axles. This is the original sticker that ran on the car. You can see when you depress the clutch pedal how it would swing in an arc and go by and cut the edge of the little tag off here. It's the original steering, the original sector shaft. The steering wheel is the original. The brake handle is the original piece, along with the throttle pedal. This link and the motor plate are also originals that were all brought back from other owners of the car. As I got the car, it was pretty incomplete. But the people that owned the car all had wrecking yards, fortunately, and they didn't throw anything away. They just put another nail on the wall and saved it, which was very, helpful during the restoration.
Old collectors. I was talking to one of the old-timers, and they said this chassis, the Kent Fuller chassis, they said, Kent Fuller, if he didn't like it, he just didn't make a chassis for you. A very independent guy.
Yes, he was, and still this today, he's a pretty independent character, lovable guy. Built a tremendous amount of cars in the late 50s through the late 60s anyway. And this car was kind of the benchmark. They all kind of followed the same shape in the roll bar and the front suspension and that. And there was a number of cars that he built, the original Hawaiian cars for Roland, and just on and on and on.
Tell us about the engine that you and Art Chrisman put together.
The engine is a replication of the original style motor running the car. And it starts off as a basis as a 1958 Chrysler Imperial motor. And the cylinder heads have been ported to the style of the original ones. It's got the original style Donovan rocker arms in it. On the stands, they're black anodized. It's got the original style forged true pistons that I got through my friend Bill Miller. He reproduced them for me. It's got the stock crank that they ran back then. It's got the style oil pan they ran, which is a 56 Chrysler Windsor. And it was a peculiar pan that they only used for a short period of time in production, but all the racers used them. And we have the original Schieffer style magneto right here, which is the old Harmons Collins flathead magneto that has been upgraded to use into this. It replaced the Vertex that this car ran earlier on. The fuel injection unit is the Hilborn style that was run originally on the car. None of the motor components were ever with this car, but they're exactly the same style because the motors were destroyed back then just as they are now on a regular basis. It's got the original style barrel valve, the original Heim style rod ends that were peculiar to the World War II aircrafts. The blower is the same blower style that was run, assembled by Gene Mooneyham, who did the original blowers. And end plates, the breathers on top of the valve covers are the same style. The original style breathers that it ran, and Black ran these clear plastic covers over the top here to keep the spark plug wires from popping off on the way down the track.
You know, hearing that top fuel elimination going in the background, is that kind of what this car sounded like, I assume?
Pretty much. They weren't quite as noisy, but the layout of the motor is virtually the same. They're still a hemispherical combustion chamber on a Chrysler-based motor. This was the first run of the Chrysler motors from 53 to 58. Then they went to the later 426 motors, which is a basis at the motors they run now. The valve system, the blower system, and the injections are this is a very prehistoric system, but they still run on the same basis.
Steve, I think one of the prettiest features in this car, and probably a feature that distinguishes this car, is this fabulous scoop on the injectors.
Yes, it really is. It was done by Wayne Ewing, who did the original body on the car, and it's a very distinctive shape that was first used on Tony Nancy's wedge car. It didn't have the little divider in the front, but the shape was very, very close to it. And it was a very distinctive feature, not only going through the pits because it carried the color of the car up very high, as well as going down the track. And most of the other cars, the scoops were aluminum castings, and that it just kind of blended into the background. So this was a very prominent part of the car.
Well, as when we were talking earlier, you said if you had to pick a couple of distinguishing features about this car, it's the wind loss rate and the hood scoop, or the injector scoop.
Pretty much. I mean, both of them, stick out in almost everybody's mind that you talk to that comes by and sees the car completed here today.
Now, I know that the fuel pump and some of these features here are pieces that you've taken great pains in putting together. Why don't you point out that pickup line?
Yeah. The fuel system on this car is pretty close to the style they run today, once again in its infancy. It's got this is a Hilborn style pump right here, which is similar to what even some of the alcohol dragsters run today. And this one is peculiar unto itself because it has a small pressure tap here. There's a very, very limited number of these produced, and they were going to run them, I believe, on the aircraft engines of Curtiss. And they needed a pressure tap here to take into the cockpit for a gauge. And the drag race people were not interested in the fuel pressure for the driver to see. And so this was a pump that we spent a lot of money on, and that we had to buy a whole other pile of parts in a group just to get a hold of the fuel pump. But it was very critical to the restoration of this car because we're trying to bring it back to the very high 90% of originality.
And I know we talked about the hosing, the hoses and so forth.
This is a product that Aeroquip makes. It's called Stratoflex. It was used in early piston-driven World War II aircraft. And it's peculiar to the stuff they make today in that it's got a fabric covering over it. The fabric covering kept the metal lining inside of here from chafing through the outside skin of the airplane. And they're very distinctive also with these yellow ferrules right here. And this was exactly what was run on the car. In fact, you can see the Stratoflex. I got this from my friends at the antique airplane store in Chino, California here. And the pressure side of the fuel delivery is an old Teflon lined hose like this right here. It's still manufactured, but it's a World War II product also. These cars carried a lot of World War II and Korean parts in them because they were readily available at the surplus stores and were of very high quality.
Well, Steve, standing here with you is like standing next to a star. Everybody that goes by waves to Steve.
Well,
and
hardly. I just have been exposed to drag race since I was in high school, and I've worked for a number of these people over the years, and it's like a big family. There's probably 80 or 90% of them are still active, and we all started off with little tiny cars, and I drove a tiny bit, and everybody's just grown up with the sports, and so it's just, like I say, a big family. They go by and wave and honk, and
well, they love you.
Yeah.
They love you.
Thanks.
Being the proud owner of this car, and actually I think of myself as just a caretaker for it, I think the fun of it is sharing it with everybody, and I know Steve has got his blood, sweat, and tears in this car, and he plans to share it with the old guys at the Nostalgia Drags. And
yes, there's an event coming up directly here in Bakersfield, California, and it's the home of the old smokers meet in Bakersfield, which was the California biggest race of the year. And a lot of people came from back east for it also. And they have a reunion up there every year. This will be the third one. And it'll be great to get away from the hectic drag race here that NHRA puts on Sunday, just because it's such a fast-paced thing, to get back to a little more kickback venue where you can spend some more time, see your friends without the pressure of race day and that.
Well, I know a lot of people have been waiting for Steve to finish this car, and I know they want to share it with you, and you want to share it with them. And I just want to say thanks so much for allowing me to take a part in this, and enjoy the car as well. And congratulations on a fabulous job, Steve.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate that. Take care.
But you know what? We just saw Linda Vaughn. It's just amazing who you'll see at the drag races. This is truly...
And I know Linda Vaughn. God, that's my day is gone,
I should never have said Linda Vaughn, but it's indeed a pleasure.
No, I can't talk anymore.
To be here with Pete Brock, and we just talked to Carroll Shelby, and there's a kind of a combination, Pete Brock, Carroll Shelby, that everybody knows, and Pete, you are the father of the Cobra Coupe.
Right, it's a car that would be sorely outclassed here today at the NHRA drags, but in its own type of racing, it was the best in its time.
Tell me about the Cobra Coupe.
Well, it was a car that shouldn't have been, really, because it didn't start out that we thought we were going to go to Europe, and we were mostly racing roadsters in the United States. And when Carroll made the plan to go to Europe, we knew we were going to be really outclassed because the aerodynamics on the roadster were so low that we didn't have a chance. So I designed the new body on it, and we took the car from 165 miles an hour to 195 miles an hour just by changing the body alone.
And what did you win with that coupe?
In 1965, we won the World Championship. We beat Ferrari. Only American car ever to do that.
And this is the guy, Pete Brock. The Cobra Ferrari Wars.
Absolutely. One of the greatest wars ever.
Actually, some of the guys out here would think these are the greatest wars ever between Don Prudhomme and all the 5,000 horsepower monsters they've got out here. But you're an old racer on the streets, they say.
Well, this kind of racing is something that you can come out here. It's history. These guys are doing something that nobody in the world has ever done. And as time goes by, you'll never see this history again. So it's great to come out and see it. These are the good old days.
Standing around this car, you hear the most wonderful comments. One of the old timers came by and said, I remember when this car came out, it seemed so much longer. Now, of course, they're extremely long. And I'm sitting here listening to the comments, and I'm standing talking to Pete, and he was talking about how advanced and high-tech this car was in his time.
It was really interesting because I was working for Max Balchowski, and Tom Ivo was running Buick engines, and the guy that was wrenching Tommy Ivo's cars was Don Prudhomme. So before Don even became known as a driver, he was the wrench on these cars. And when he started going fast on his own, of course, he split up with Tom and has gone on, an absolutely incredible history. So when this car was built, this was the absolute state-of-the-art car. I mean, this was to die for. And to come out here and to see it today, it's sort of like going back and looking at the the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. I mean, it's this little tiny thing, you know, but it made great history. Yeah. And it's an absolutely beautiful classic car of its time. So really enjoyed seeing it. Thanks for bringing it out.
Oh, it's great. It's an honor for me to have it here. And it's great fun when we get the winners together looking at their equipment.
All right, we'll see you later, Bruce.
Well, that's it for this time, but we'll be back with part 2 of Don Prudhomme's Final Strike next week, and some more interviews with Carol Shelby, Linda Vaughn, and some more great drag racers. We'll also be looking at some other very interesting drag cars. All that and more on the next World of Collector Cars. If you'd like to have a list of videos available and receive other automobile information, just send a self-addressed stamped envelope to World of Collector Cars, P.O. Box 7307, Klamath Falls, Oregon 97602-0307. Or you can call 1-800-533-4000.
World of Collector Cars is funded by Kimberly-Clark Corporation, maker of new Evolution 4 fabric for superior car cover protection. Evolution 4 fabric gives your car the advantage of 4-layer protection. Preserve your pride and joy with new Evolution 4 fabric, the sign of complete protection.
The World of Collector Cars is funded in part by Steel Rubber Products. Steel Rubber Products, manufacturing weather stripping and molded rubber parts for Chrysler Corporation, Packard, Independence, and General Motors Cars and Trucks. Steel Rubber Products, making parts for fellow hobbyists for nearly 30 years.